Gracious Father in heaven, Lord, we just want to thank you and praise you for all the blessings that you bestow upon our lives, Lord. And as we are certainly into troublous times, we pray for your strength and your wisdom and your guidance, Father, to help us navigate through, and that all that we do and all that we say would glorify thee. Father, we pray for our loved ones that are out there, Father, that don't know what's going on. And, some of us can be fearful of how our families are responding. And we just pray, Father, to stay close to you, to think on heavenly things, and to become more and more like you, Lord, that others would see your love in us and your grace in us, Father, and that they might be drawn to you through us. We thank you for the blessing and privilege, Father, to have been called to this great work at such a time, Father. We pray for those that are out there that are struggling with this virus, that are loved ones are struggling with this virus, and we just pray for all the medical personnel that are trying to keep up with all the work that it entails, Father, and everything that they have families as well, Lord. We pray that while we go through these times of judgment, we know that it is also a time of mercy. And we just ask you, Lord, for your great mercy. We ask you for more and more of your Holy Spirit. We pray, Father, that our only desire would be to reflect your image and to enlarge the kingdom of heaven, and that anything that comes our way, Lord, we would be strengthened by you to endure, and that we would remain faithful and endure till the end. We lift up our sister Tony tonight as she's going to present the message, and we ask you, Father, for your spirit to be upon her, that you give her clarity of thought and clarity of mind, and that we can all, Father, have a greater understanding as we go through the study on the two popes, that we would have understanding of the parallels and where this is all leading, Father, on our line. We thank you again, Lord, for allowing us such a privilege to be a part of this great work. And we cannot get through it without you. So we ask you, Father, to ever be with us according to your promise. You will never leave us nor forsake us. So we thank you and we praise you, and we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, so today's presentation is going to be the two popes.
We got to share the notes for you, right?
Yes, so I need to share the notes, and
Okay.
I don't think I have too much artwork. Just keep scrolling.
Is Christine, do you have the notes open or no? Or is that Francisco? Let me find
They're
them.
both the same.
Okay, let me find them real quick.
Yeah, it's just me right now.
Okay.
Oh.
I find them.
Hi, Francisco.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Happy you're all here. Praise the God we could all be together.
Yep.
This is our social distancing.
Yeah.
Amen.
I think it's beautiful. And actually, yesterday, well, I think Tony already knows, I'm not sure. But yesterday I did 2 quick Zoom meetings with some of my clients. I did one at 11 and one at 3, and kind of taught them how to use Zoom so that they can still kind of work behind the scenes. And it's really a good blessing because it's good for families, that are separated. It's like some people really have a hard time with something like this. And to me, it's really easy because I'm already on my own. But I get that people really have a hard time, but if we can just put in our mind that, it's a temporary thing. I'm looking at the people out there that don't know what's going on, but it's just a temporary thing. And Zoom is great. You can still feel you're close, works great. So I'm thankful for having this. So sorry, Tony.
Hey, if I could just also make a comment, I think it is as if it is for us, we were prepared by using Zoom before this happened. And now when this happened, it is as if it's forcing them, because a lot of my church members that I was thinking, how am I going to ask them to come and join me on Zoom, if I wanted to present them something. And now when this happened, the pastor is like, oh, there is a thing that's called Zoom. Let's all learn how to use it. And I'm like, I was just praying about it. I was asking God, how am I gonna, teach older people how to use Zoom?
Yeah.
And now you know, and God is really, I believe God is really using this. Well, not, I'm not, you know, I don't, you know, that's what I'm just trying to say is that God is using this opportunity to prepare, you know, he has prepared us before it happened, and now he's bringing them in so that they can join now.
Right.
Not yet, but yeah.
We had everything in place, so it really wasn't a transition for us. It was really beautiful how the Lord, you know, we know that he knows the end from the beginning. He knows everything we need in advance, and he had everything lined up for us. We were already had a system fully in place, and it was just, so that's this hump. We got more humps to come. And I pray that we go through it together, every one of us, faithful and true all the way to the end.
Okay. All right. Two popes from Elder Tess, and this is from the East African school. Okay. I want to begin with review. We covered a lot of information yesterday, and especially when it's given in Catholic Vatican style language, it can be hard to get to the point. So I just want to review what we covered yesterday to begin with, probably going back more to the beginning. When we lined up with the history of Christ in our own history, and we didn't place the counterfeit, but that was the thought that we had. In History of Success, you see both leaders at the time of the end, the first and the second angel, Christ and John, Parmeninder and Jeff. The second arrives at the waymark of baptism, or the 2001, and they become more visible, but they are not yet leading the movement until you have Christ come out of the wilderness after the marriage of Canaan. Finally, at the first temple cleansing around the time of the imprisonment of John, lining up with 2014. So that was the whole point of lining those two histories up, was to show why, when we come to the time of the end for modern Babylon, we see both leaders at the same point in time. Just to give a little bit of history, it's probably an oversimplified version, but around the time of the Second Vatican Council, you had the 1860s, late 1860s, early 1870s, you had much Latin America involved in civil war. So that the southern countries of America were going through some extremely difficult political time. Thousands of people disappeared or were killed. You had militia governments fight wars really between capitalist-style dictatorships propped up by the United States. And these were more socialistic, communistic parties. In the Catholic Church in the modern countries of America, Latin America, began to become quite political in this history of civil war, particularly in one country, El Salvador. So the Catholic Church in that country, the priests and bishops, they started becoming concerned about the point of all the poor people who in this history of civil war was suffering most acutely. They began to promote the needs of the poor and the working class. And this essentially is what drew them to the type of Catholic doctrine that was equivalent, or the religious equivalent, to socialism. So the Catholic Church in those countries, much of them started to become political, leaning towards the new type of typology, what that was developing in the Catholic Church. Needed to be involved in taking care of those who are struggling, minority groups, the poor, all of those different areas, women. And this happened around the same time as the Second Vatican Council. It influenced the Second Vatican Council because much of the reforms are really liberalistic.
Oh, keep it girl. Stop.
And socialistic in ideas. So if you were to think about that, this theology that was developing in Latin America, their ideas of taking care of the poor. For example, if you're a strong Catholic, you do not believe in contraceptives of any kind, unless it's type of monitoring of women's monthly cycle Otherwise, no contraceptive of any kind is permitted. Abortion is just the furthest end of that. They don't approve of abortion. But before you get to abortion, before you get pregnant, the Catholic Church does not permit any form of contraception. So you have all these poor people in Latin America, and many of them having a great deal of children because they can't regulate their pregnancies. And in many cases, women who were struggling to support their children and their fathers who had left home would only come home occasionally, would sleep with her, get her pregnant, and then leave her with a newborn baby to care for. Or in many cases, as a civil war progressed, of mass rape, and these women were bearing the load of raising families and children. So when the Catholic Church starts to care about their plight, they start thinking, we need to be able to give these women contraceptives because this constantly producing children is creating a burden in their life. So naturally, these liberal liberation theologies, which is what it becomes to known as, it really does become liberal in its mindset because it's caring about the people. Contraception is just one example of that, trying to meet the needs of the people. And when they try to meet the needs of the people, it regularly goes against Catholic theology. So in Latin America, in the 1960s, 70s, particularly, this theology developed in wartime, known as liberation theology. It was particularly taken up by the Jesuits. Just quoting here, the Latin America's bloodthirsty cold warriors' liberation theology was a synonym of communism. So the capitalist style dictatorship, some of which were being armed and propped up by the United States, they began to turn the Catholic Church. They began to turn on the Catholic Church, and many Catholics died. Catholics who believed in this liberation theology, they were killed by the government for promoting the liberation theology because it was seen as political. And particularly in El Salvador, the government militias would shout a phrase, be a patriot, kill a priest. So that was their mindset toward Catholicism through this history. If you want to be a patriot, kill a priest, because it was the priests, the Catholic Church, that were promoting socialism in Latin America. I want to come back to 1979. 1979, where does John Paul go? He goes to the United States, to Washington. He also goes somewhere else. In 1979, he visits South America and he goes to Mexico. He attracts the large crowd in history, estimated at 500,000? What is that number?
Million.
It's million.
Okay,
5 million.
Let's see, showing that he had a political influence to reckon with. And he used his power to denounce liberation theology. So John Paul grows up in Poland. He's an extreme conservative. His mother dies, and he's about 8 years old. And if you want to break down his
Psychology.
He's going outside. He has a bit of an issue with women. His mother was extremely sick. He lost her when he was 8 years old. He turned to Mary, but this is the problem with the Catholic Church. They mask their sexism with Mary, as if they look up to Mary because they're looking up to this mother. But when he looks up to Mary, it's such veiled, but extreme sexism. A woman has worth as long as she's a virgin, as long as she's lifted up as this pure, glowing, holy thing. Not for her mind, not for her action, only a pure womb. That's how the Catholic Church views a woman. So his mother dies when he's 8 years old, and he turns in an extreme way. to the Catholic Church and to Mary, and is extremely conservative. So as he's trying to see the downfall of communism, he has all these troublesome Jesuits, particularly Latin America, promoting socialism and this liberation theology. In Mexico, in 1979, he attracts a crowd of 5 million people and starts to publicly denounce this liberation theology. He says, when they begin to use political means, they cease to be theologians. Can we sense John Paul's hypocrisy? Was he political? Yes, he was political. And when the priests are going against his political ideals, promoting of what is quite liberalism, he begins to accuse them of using political means. He has a peculiar issue with women, quoting, "Women were the thorn in John Paul's side. Their challenge pains him more than pains at this point. Their demands and criticism enlarge him. Yet the Sears controversy surrounding birth control, divorce, and the ordination of women are not going to disappear. The revolution in women's rights is going on. John Paul's two oppositions is to be fixed. His rigidity is well known, and his line has hardened. His temper has flared. In 1995, he met with the Undersecretary of the United Nations. Her name was Navias Sadat, the Undersecretary of the United Nations on Popularization and Development. She met with him privately at the Vatican, and they began to have this veiled disagreement about the role of abortion in developing countries. She insisted that the matter had to be addressed. Domestic violence was rising, and women were often becoming pregnant unwillingly. John Paul burst out angrily. Do you think that the irresponsible behavior of man is caused by women? Perhaps such a view is not surprising in a Polish patriarch of the Pope's generation. So this article begins to break down his mentality. It's extremely sexist, extremely not liberation theology, but that very extremely conservative. So in 1979, he travels to South America and denounces this liberation theology that's been rising up over the last 10 years. A couple of years later, in 1981, he directly takes on the Jesuits. The Jesuits have been fairly independent to the Vatican. They've been quite strong-willed, and despite opposition, they've been promoting this liberation theology. In 1981, the head of the Jesuit order, I don't think he died, I think he had a stroke. He wasn't able to continue as head of the Jesuit order. Until this time, it was known that the Jesuits, the head of the Jesuit order, is known as the Black Pope, if you've heard of that term. Because there's a second highest in command in the Catholic Church, it goes Pope, head of the Jesuit orders, that is the hierarchy. The Black Pope could no longer fulfill his job function, and the Jesuit order elected his successor, as it is always the practice. Quoting the Time magazine, 1981. John Paul has entered a high-stakes game. The Jesuits are the largest and the most dominant of the men's order. 27,000 of them far-flung influence in education, theology, and missions. Their general, the head of the Jesuit order, is considered the second most powerful figure in the Roman Catholicism. John Paul II, no stranger to controversy, last week took a bold step to bridle the Society of Jesus. In a move interpreted as a warning to all religious orders, he suspended the normal workings of the Jesuit constitution, removed the acting leader of the organization, and replaced him with two Italian Jesuits who were conservatives and essentially acted as puppet leaders. Pontiffs have intervened in the past by dictating the elections of Supervisor General, head of the Jesuit order. In 1793, Pope Clement XIV even dissolved the society, a 41-year-long humiliation that some Jesuits, intellectuals close to the Vatican, are comparing with John Paul's treatment. So all through his rise, and finally when he became Pope in 1978, and then in 1979 when he goes to Mexico, he's denouncing this liberation theology. 1981, he begins to take control of the Jesuit order, and he forces them into submission. He removes the leader and puts in puppet leaders, and they're supposed to elect their own leadership. As the Jesuits close to the Vatican starts to compare John Paul II and what he's done to the Jesuit order with abolishing in 1773. So there's this war, and we've alluded to that. This is just a little bit more detailed. We've alluded to the civil war inside the papacy. In this time period, when in 1989, in this history, you had John Paul II versus the Jesuit, and it's been developing in the history previously. In 1989, we could come back to El Salvador. El Salvador was in civil war. It was one of the areas that was promoting the liberation theology. In 1989, troops belonging to El Salvador, troops that had been America trained, killed 6 Jesuit priests. This was a response to what the liberation theology those Jesuits had been preaching. So the government, members of the government militia, attacked the Catholic Church and killed 6 leading Jesuit priests. This caused such outrage, it led to the end of the civil war in El Salvador. In 2019, this is a New York Times article. It takes us back to 1989. The killing of the Jesuit priest in El Salvador, the political impacts of that, and then it speaks about 2019. Pope Francis, the first Jesuit Pope, visited Central America and hailed the Jesuits working in Central America as pioneers in the struggle for social justice. So what does that tell you about Pope Francis' position on liberation theology? He said they were pioneers in the struggle of social justice. So John Paul condemns them. Malachi Martin called them betrayers of the Catholic Church. Pope Francis called them pioneers for social justice. So we go into this history of 1989 and we see John Paul II and the Jesuits, they're in this civil war, and they're half right and half wrong. John Paul is the leader, just as Butler was the leader. He's right on one thing, and he's right on the needs to overthrow the Soviet Union. But the Jesuits are right on liberation theology. The changes of the Second Vatican Council, which we lined up with 1863, this was organization. So each one of those were organization. Okay, the audience is asking questions, and Tessa is speaking, and she's saying no. The Civil War was going on. It was a major catalyst in the end of the war. Because of the international outcry at the killing of the Catholic priests, it forced people to negotiate peace. So we know John Paul's position on liberation theology. We line that up in 1888, the leadership opposing the radical new faction, which seemingly new doctrine. Lining up with Butler, the leadership of opposing Wagner and their supposed radical new doctrine, we found that both had elements that were correct and incorrect. John Paul II is the leader who's doing a good work, but he's rejecting the new theology. Butler rejected justification by faith. John Paul II rejected liberation theology. We lined those two up. And then if that's 1888, the next waymark on our reform line is the same time at the end, 1989. We line that up with 2001, and that's when we see a new leadership raised in our history at the time of the end. So how many do we have? Two. Both arrive at the same time, first and second angel, Elder Jeff and Elder Parmenter. Compared and contrast that, we saw in 2001 the rise of Ratzinger, who's going to be the first angel, and then Bergoglio, who will become the second. I just want to mention Ratzinger's position on liberation theology. He is the most prolific theologian the Catholic Church has had in 100 years. But his position on liberation theology was not favorable. It was in line with John Paul II. He said liberation theology was a single heresy. He blasted the new movement as a fundamental threat to the church and prohibited some of its leading proponents from speaking publicly. In an effort to clean house, Ratzinger even summoned outspoken priests to Rome and censored them on grounds that they were abandoning the church's spiritual role and inappropriate socio-economic activism. So Ratzinger is not favorable to liberation theology. He called it a singular heresy, a fundamental threat. So he's not going to take on the liberation theology. Instead, in 2001, he's going to take on sexual abuse crisis, the greatest crisis since the Protestant Reformation. In 2001, he takes over all those cases worldwide. He begins to clean up, in his own words, the filth inside the Catholic Church. At the same point in time, we have Bergoglio, and he becomes a cardinal. He meets some of those radical liberation theologies, believing cardinals, and they had formed the top secret St. Gallian group under Ratzinger and John Paul II. They had pretty much gone into hiding because they would get censored, sometimes excommunicated. So the secret group, the St. Gallen group, that were bent towards liberation theology, they formed this top secret group and started planning how they would overturn the Catholic leadership and bring in a pope who believed in this type of liberation. They met Bergoglio in 2001. When he becomes cardinal, it's almost worth noting that in 2001, he had been relatively unknown. Bergoglio does this act in South America where he visits victims of HIV/AIDS, and he kisses and washes the feet of AIDS patients. This has become a major part of his, and could say, cult of personality. Every time people think that he's bad or had done something wrong, people say, well, in 2001, he washed the feet of AIDS patients. It became quite famous. So you begin to see him organized. We mark up 2001, the arrival of the second angel. In 2005, we see the arrival of Bergoglio. In 2001, we mark the death of leadership. In 2005, we mark the death of leadership. It wasn't just John Paul who died in 2005. Who else died? Lucia. So you mark the death. It wasn't just their leadership. It was John Paul. It was Lucia. They both died in 2005. You have the death of leadership, and then at this conclave, being the meeting where they elect a new pope, you have Bergoglio come in second. So he is, for the first time, internationally recognized. We see Ratzinger become Pope Benedict, but we also have Bergoglio coming in second place. In this history, we mark Elder Jeff. He's still the leader. But then in 2012, we have this crisis in the movement of time setting. He's on the wrong side of that crisis. 2005 to 2012, Pope Benedict is Pope, but he's losing his struggle to clean out the papacy, the Vatican particularly. In 2012, there is the scandal, the Veda leaks scandal that demonstrates his failure to clean out, particularly not just the issue of immorality, but the financial misdoings. 2014, we marked a transition in leadership from Elder Jeff to Elder Parmenter, from the first angel to the second angel. 2012, because of the scandal, Benedict steps down, first pope in 600 years, and we had the introduction of Bergoglio. He finally comes in. So this is the empowerment of the second angel and the empowerment of the second angel. Immediately, Pope Francis begins to make a storm. In 2013, someone asked him about homosexuality. In the church, he says, if someone is gay and he searches for the Lord and has goodwill, who am I to judge? This causes a storm within the Catholic Church. It's not normal Catholic response to homosexuality. People become more concerned than ever before about the direction he's going to take the Catholic Church in. And then in 2019, just after becoming Pope,
13.
he announces,
2013.
Oh, sorry. And then in 2013, just after becoming Pope, he announces that in 2014, there's going to be an extraordinary synod. Extraordinary meaning unusual or not after the normal Catholic meanings. It's not one that would have just been part of their role in calendar. He called it a special synod on the family. And when you start talking about the family, it's all those conservative doctrines that people have been fighting about. It's not just homosexuality, gay marriage. It's also contraceptions, the roles of women in family, and the church, all of those different things. So he's choosing a synod on the family. This is what all those liberation theology arguments center around. And we went through a history of that synod. There is a book written by a man we should remember. His name is Edward Penton. And the little book, and the title of the book is, he's a leading Catholic. If you go to EWTN, which we spoke yesterday, you'll find him being interviewed on camera, article after article. He's a common Catholic journalist, conservative, and it's titled A Rigging of a Vatican Synod. So we all know what rigging means. Who wants to explain? Can someone read for me till I get back? I gotta help my brother.
Do we all know what rigging means? Who wants to explain to us the meaning of rigging? In case anyone's confused by that word. Brother Willie, what does it mean to rig something? What's commonly rigged? Elections. Lack of transparency during an election. I would suggest it starts with that, but it goes further than just not transparency. Why don't you have transparency in an election? Because you're cheating. So you're trying to manipulate the outcome. When you rig something, you do something in secrecy because you're trying to manipulate the outcome. And this is what Edward Penton and other conservative Catholics start to accuse Francis and Francis' disciples of in 2014. That whatever Pope Francis said about not questioning the Vatican Catholic theology and it being an open forum for everyone to have freedom and discuss his words are meaningless because the actual process by which he conducts this synod gives this appearance that he is trying to manipulate the outcome of the synod. There is a prominent cardinal. He is patron of the Sovereign Military Order of the Knights of Malta. So that's quite a title. You know, if he's, you know, he's of the Sovereign Military Order of the Knights of Malta, that he's a powerful cardinal. His name is Raymond Burke. He said after the synod, it's clear to me that there were individuals who of us obviously had a very strong influence on a synod process who were pushing an agenda. So Cardinal Raymond Burke immediately accused these individuals at the synod of trying to manipulate it, pushing an agenda. And those individuals were handpicked by Pope Francis. An anonymous Roman priest closely involved in the synod debates gave this statement anonymously. This was a rigged synod. I call it the rubber synod. This all occurred in October of 2014. One of the chief issues, we discussed it yesterday, is that the synod fathers, those bishops, they were divided into 10 small working groups. So there was 10 groups formed, 3 Italian, 3 English, 2 Spanish, 2 French, working in their own languages, who was to oppose amendments to the report. In preparation to make a final document that they would all sign off on and would be released to the world. So they were meant to organize in small groups and discuss their points and what they wanted in this final report. And they were to put their suggestions into writing. Normally, once those small groups, because this is the way every synod operates, those small groups write the report of what they believe, and then that report is meant to be written out and given to the public. But after these working group sessions had finished, Cardinal Baldessari announced to the participants in the synod hall that the reports of the group would not be made available to the public, contrary to the practice of previous synods. Instead, a summary would be made of the group's discussion, which would then be published. All that means is if I have a view and I put it into writing, instead of my view being put into writing and distributed, someone is going to take that view, make a summary of it, however they want to word it, and then that will be published. This is what Pope Francis had done, but manipulated the outcome. Because if my views are conservative, Pope Francis has liberals interpreting my views and rewording everything, so that the conservative essence of my writing gets lost. We talked yesterday about George Pell, the Australian currently in a maximum security prison. He didn't respond well to this. Eyewitnesses said that he slammed his hand on the table and insisted that people had a right to hear what the bishops were saying. So pretty much you had an anarchy in front of Pope Francis in the Synod Hall. 17 bishops, cardinals, one after the other, stood up and denounced the decision to not publish the writings. There was uproar and chanting for a number of minutes. In the end, Pope Francis caved and he allowed some publishing. They called this a mini revolt. So I think we can all start to appreciate that it's not that easy being Pope. It's not that easy even for Pope Francis to go in front of all of those bishops and cardinals and say, this is how we're not going to conduct this meeting. They're in open revolt to his decisions. But then when it comes to the final working document that was to be released publicly, we discussed how he put those 7 liberals on the drafting committee for this document, and then finally had to bring in a conservative, and that ended up into a huge civil war mess itself. Of the bishops at the synod, 41 publicly expressed concern, particularly regarding the language of homosexuality. They said there was a seismic shift in tone toward the acceptance of homosexuality. Conservatives were outraged, according to the Associated Press, about a remarkable tone of acceptance extended to gays. So they're not claiming to change Catholic theology, but they were able to hijack the writing of a final report and change the language. So all through this, particularly 2014, but then all through this history, you have these two groups developing. And then we also spoke about a separate issue, Rapam. Separate to what he's doing with the synod on the family, they organized this RIPAM conference. RIPAM stands for the Red Ecclesial Pan Amazonia, which just means that it is an ecclesial church. It's an Amazonian conference for the whole of the Amazon region. And it's particularly relating to human rights in all of its forms, taking care of the indigenous, the poor, etc., which is the exact line of thinking as liberation theology. We spoke about how this liberal faction had access to Francis, to conversations between the liberal fraction and Francis about making bold proposals, starting to introduce married priests, women taking up roles previously forbidden to them, etc. And from 2014 to 2019 is a steady progression of preparation for the Amazonian Senate. And you have two different narratives developing about this. EWTN and LifeSite News, these are the two particularly conservative channels. Church Militant is extremely conservative, but really in the line of like an independent Adventist. These two, you could say, conservative Adventist. If you were to compare and contrast, Church Militant is entirely independent Adventist. It's extremely conservative. We talked about the beginning of the Amazonian Synod, and this is when we start to see these two sides develop. You have a WTN and NCR, National Catholic Reporter. There's another website known as National Catholic Register. It is not the same thing. It is conservative. National Catholic Reporter is separate to that, and it is liberal. So if you go to National Catholic Reporter, so if you go to NCR, make sure it's Reporter and not Register. As the Amazonian Synod begins in the later months of 2019, around October, November, these factions really break into the open. I want to step back from that and come back prior to that. So can we see that there's these two factions developing, conservatives and liberals, both having a leader to look to? Normally, when there's a leadership transition, you find the first leader died. If you were to go back to the history of Moses and Joshua, when the mantle is passed to Joshua, what happens to Moses? He dies. When you come to the history of Christ and you go from John to Jesus, what happens to John? He dies. When you come to 2014, there's a mantle changed. But is Elder Jeff gone anywhere? No. So people now are tested. They now have a choice between two leaders. They don't have to follow the second. They can feel comfortable following the first. So you have these two factions developing in these histories between who follows Jeff, his disciples, and who follows Permender, his disciples. So from 2014 to 2019, you have these two sides develop. Who follows Benedict, his disciples, and who follows Francis, his disciples. They have two leaders to choose from. And it's not happened in 600 years that you would have a leadership transition as this in the Catholic Church. Pope Benedict, is he supportive of Francis to begin with? He says at the beginning, I'm passing the mantle, I'm going to go into hiding, but he never truly relinquishes his control. Normally, if a pope resigns, what does he become? He becomes a layperson. He loses that title. But Benedict chooses not to do that. He wants to become Pope Emeritus. So he chooses to keep this title of Pope. He never actually let go of his leadership. and he stays living inside the Vatican. So he could have fully relinquished his leadership authority at the very beginning, but at the very beginning, he chooses not to do that. The same thing he's claiming to, it's the same time he's claiming to support Francis. All this history, Elder Jeff passing the mantle, did he properly relinquish his authority? No. In fact, from his statements most recently, we understand that what he expected Parminder to be was some type of puppet leader, to still come under his authority, somehow that we would turn to him for direction and guidance, and he would still be the one quietly leading the movement, never fully letting go of his authority, even when he claimed to pass the mantle. So we find that both former leaders are holding on to that claim of authority.
Okay, I'll go on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. When do you find Benedict first start to cause problems for Francis? First come out in an open contradiction to him. Do you all remember? It was presented before the shaking ever happened, because I wanted to give Elder Jeff a warning. He didn't listen. April 2019, just prior to this, Francis had been dealing with sexual abuse crisis. And what is Francis' position on sexual abuse crisis? What does he believe is the cause? What would Francis say the cause is for sexual abuse crisis? So now the audience is talking. He's starting to introduce that thought, that priestly celibacy, the way that the very least, how priests, they're taking there at a young age and they're locked off from the community, really. They're quite emotionally undeveloped, that they have, by the time these young men enter the priesthood, they have not developed in society properly. They end up warped people. And he's starting to allude to that these priests have not been properly connecting with their societies, and there's some type of issue there. And you could go as far as saying priest celibacy, but Francis won't be that open about it. So Francis, prior to April 19th, he has a meeting where he calls all the key leaders of the Catholic Church across the world and conducts meetings on the sexual abuse crisis. And he starts to meet with the victims. And through those meetings, he starts to push his idea that it's because of this disconnect between priests and society. How is that different to the Catholic Church's position before? Because that's not the normal Catholic position on why these cases occur. But Benedict's reason for why these sexual abuse cases happen. What's Benedict's reasoning for why these sexual abuse cases happened? So now the audience is talking. Benedict doesn't say that. That's what John Paul said. Women are raped because of their own fault, essentially. Benedict doesn't name the women particularly. Who does he blame? Because for them, the largest percentage of cases, the victims are boys. Women are still abused, but the majority of the victims are young men. He blames a liberal mindset. So he blames the liberalisms, particularly the West, and the sexual immorality he saw rise particularly in the 60s and 70s. He talked about the 1960s in the sexual revolution. He blames all of that for the sexual abuse crisis within the Catholic Church. This is an article of The Guardian, April 20th, 2019. It's titled, One Church, Two Popes. So if you look up The Guardian, One Church, Two Popes, the crisis inside the Vatican, why Catholicism is in a crisis this Easter. In his pre-Easter address to pilgrims gathering in Rome, Pope Francis highlighted Jesus' words as he died on the cross on the first Good Friday. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. We all, the Argentinian pontiff, stressed need to find the courage to forgive those who have wronged us. Those remarks sparked speculation about who exactly Francis was struggling to forgive. Top of most list in Rome this Easter is his predecessor, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, who decided in 2013 to break with 6,000 years of work onto death, papal tradition, and retire. This opened Catholicism's door to the breath of fresh air. That is Francis. So we can see how liberal news articles treat Francis. How do they like him? And it's clear he's well supported. For the past 6 years, as the winds of change have blown through the church, Benedict, as by large, kept a respectful silence, ignoring the ever louder pleas of traditional Catholics who want the 29-year-old to join them in opposing Francis's reform agenda.
92-year-old.
Huh?
92-year-old.
92, what'd I say, 4?
You said 29.
Oh.
Quick, you said 29. Just real quick for the recording, because it is recorded, it's 600 years of work unto death and not 6,000.
Did I? Okay, sorry.
Look, I just want to correct it for the recording.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So conservative Catholics are not hiding. They're calling to Benedict to come out of retirement and oppose Francis. But he stayed quiet from 2013 to April 2019, when Benedict published a 6,000-word article in a German magazine. It made headlines by blaming the clerical abuse scandal on a moral relativism of the 1960s sexual revolution and the homosexual cliques that allowed this lawlessness to infect seminaries. It is a line of argument that directly and conservative cardinals insist pointedly contradict all of France's efforts, including a summit of world bishops in the Vatican in February.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If I'm understanding what you just read, he's blaming the scandal, the abuse of priests, right?
Yeah.
Scandal to the 1960s sexual revolution.
Yes.
Doesn't the molestation go way back before 1960s? That's been going on forever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Like make love, not war. Those days. He's blaming it on those days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the conservative Catholics are not hiding. Or did I read that? No. Okay. So the conservative Catholics are not hiding. They're calling to Benedict to come out of retirement and oppose Francis. But he stayed quiet from 2013 to April 2019. Okay.
You're doing one more paragraph to tackle.
To tackle?
Yeah.
Okay. To tackle the damage done by a pedophilia priest by pointing the finger at a dominant culture within the church. A culture that encourages priests and bishops to operate as if they are above the moral guidelines they preach and regard themselves as beyond the sanction of civil courts. Pope Francis, the former, is being challenged by his conservative predecessor, who now has a far-right backing, including Steve Bannon. But what Benedict's intervention and apparent rebuke of his successor mostly lays bare is how hard it is proving for an absolute monarchy like the Catholic Church to operate when it has not one, but 2 living popes. Indeed, it explains why for 600 years papal retirement has regarded as not an option. The 2 of them present oppose popes of Catholicism. Benedict breaks his silence in early April 2019. Who else comes out in a steady April 5th, 2019? Elder Jeff. Now he's supposed to have passed the mantle, yes? In April 2019, Benedict releases his 6,000-word essay undermining his successor. April 2019, there's a camp meeting in Germany. And what does Elder Jeff do? What presentation was released at that camp meeting? Half right and half wrong. And what is he saying when he teaches half right and half wrong? So in 2012, he's going to say that Elder Parminder was half right and half wrong. So at the same time, he's reinforcing that he's already said that Parminder is his successor, the second angel, and the new leader of the movement. He also completely undermines his position by saying that Parminder in the history, when he brought the message, was only half right and half of it was error. And we countered that. So in April, you have this tension internally between those, and this is what really starts to divide people. Jeff's disciples from Parminder's disciples. People are unhappy with the position that we took against him. And you have 2 factions within Catholicism. Same month, you have these 2 factions as Benedict becomes out of hiding and undermines Francis. That's in April of last year. We come down to September, October of last year in the Amazon Synod. We spoke about how Pope Francis welcomed this delegation from the Amazon region and brought these statues of pregnant women, and conservative Catholics were horrified. Quoting one Cardinal Nualia, strong conservative, Pope Francis sacked him in 2017. He went on EWTN and said that the great mistake was for Francis to bring idols into the church in the first place. To throw the idols into the river as a conservative Catholic again had done maybe against human law, but to bring the idols into the church in the first place was a grave sin, a crime against the divine law. So what sin are they accusing Pope Francis of? Bringing idols into the church. What do we call that? Idolatry. They're accusing him of idolatry. The National Catholic Recorder answered back. So they are saying idolatry, abomination by Francis. National Catholic Reporter counters back. They do a 4-point series on EWTN and accuses EWTN, at least in this instance, of racism. Quoting the National Catholic Reporter, this is the National Catholic Reporter speaking about EWTN. They say, reviewers who turn to EWTN's news nightly for news from a Catholic perspective were treated to previously recorded one-on-one interviews by anchor Laura Ashburn with Mike Pence and Sarah Huckabee Sanders. So in some of these 4-part series is they break down the connection between EWTN and conservative Protestantism, particularly Trump's administration. So the NCR is highlighting the connection between EWTN and the White House, Trump's administration. The segment that was clear evidence of how a television outlet once devoted to expressions of Catholic piety and conservative catalysts and apologetics has grown into a truly influential media empire well connected to Republican politicians and the Trump White House. EWTN, where the Catholic perspective is unbasedly partisan, has become the media star in a web of connections, including wealthy conservative Catholic donors and some of the most public anti-Pope Francis forces in Catholic world. Who created EWTN? Martha and Mother Angelica. So Elder Jeff splits from the movement. He releases a presentation explaining why he split. It was his first public statement since he made it clear he was separating from this movement. What was the title of that presentation? Hiding Mother Angelica. Mother Angelica was a Catholic nun who founded EWTN. What Elder Jeff just did was he said, now I taught that in 1996, there's a formalization of a message, but also in this history, you have two streams of information, two eternal, two external. I say these two streams are CNN and Fox, symbolized by those titles. I say that CNN is good and Fox is bad. We all are familiar with that. What Elder Jeff says is that both Fox and CNN are bad. They're both two streams, CNN dragon, Fox false prophet. So it's the dragon and the false prophet. And then in his first video, when he splits from the movement, titled Hiding Mother Angelica, claims that you can place EWTN here. And what's that beast? So he says dragon, beast, false prophet. And these are the three information streams of the threefold union. So what I teach is that you have two streams of information. One is good for your agenda. One is bad for your agenda. So for a Nephilim at the end of the world, CNN is good, Fox is bad. For this movement, Time of the End magazine was good, Adventist leadership was bad. And we could go down that line. What he's saying is not that there's two streams, one is correct and one is incorrect. He's saying that there's three streams. They're equally wicked. They are the dragon. The three information streams of the threefold union, dragon, beast, and false prophet. Does that make sense? Someone in the audience says no. I will try to draw our two positions. So this is the movement position. We teach that in every dispensation, there are two streams of information. One stream is good, one stream is bad. And it's about choosing the good from the bad. That is our test in that dispensation. So you're in the dispensation of the plowing. You have to choose the Time of the End magazine over your conference church pastor. Does that make sense? And then what we're saying is that if you're a Nephilim, you want to be on the right side at the end of the world. You have to choose CNN over Fox. Does that make sense? So we say two streams. And while you find them in every dispensation, it is the formalization of the message for the 144,000. So in 1996 has a special place that in that structure. And in 1996, we placed, we're just dealing with the external, not that we couldn't do the internal. The Time of the End magazine, church pastor, but just with the external, we say CNN and Fox. Fox News becomes the propaganda machine of the Republican Party and evangelical Protestantism. They become the stream that we use for Hiddekel and the ULI. It takes you to the lake of fire. CNN, we're not talking morally. they give the right message at the end of the world, for the world. So CNN becomes good, and don't think morally and prophetically, parabolically. CNN became good, Fox becomes bad. This is the information stream that they can ingest safely. This is the one they cannot. But I also recognize that in 1996, being the formalization of the message, you can place so many things here. So you can place Yahoo News here. You can place Google. You can place Krypton. Krypton was the predecessor of WikiLeaks. It inspired Julia Assad to create WikiLeaks. Google's just a search engine, but all these things you can get placed in 1996 at the same time as the formalization of our message. It's a huge boom for these information streams. And I'm not trying to say that Krypton is good or bad. It just fits in there. I'm not trying to say Google is good or bad. It just fits in there. So it's not just Fox and CNN. They become a symbol of the Uli and the Hiddekel, the good and the bad. There are others that develop in this important year. So this is what the movement teaches, what FFA teaches, what Elder Jeff has fought for from the very beginning of the Midnight Cry is that this is incorrect. This understanding is what has divided the movement. If you want to know why that there's been this shaking, it is almost entirely, it all comes back to this issue here. Because Elder Jeff does not believe this day, when November 9th was presented in Arkansas, October 3rd, 2019. We did not fight over November 9th. It was accepted on the spot, but stayed for about 2 hours. We fought over this. He did not accept it. So that was rejected from the very beginning of the Midnight Cry. What he teaches is that in 1996, you have CNN. It is the voice of the dragon. You have Fox, which is the voice of the false prophet. And you have EWTN, which is the voice of the beast. So he says that these three information streams are the voice of the threefold union. Does that make sense? The first thing I don't see logic to is CNN. How is that the voice of the United Nations? And Fox, the voice of America? CNN is created in America. It's a news platform for Americans, just as much as Fox is. So how can you say CNN is the voice of the United Nations? Who is influencing what CNN broadcasts? Because it's not Pakistan, it's not Uganda, it's not Russia. Russia's impacting this one. If you want to start saying that there's a foreign interference, Russia is impacting what Fox presents. They're not impacting what CNN presents. What portion of the United Nations is speaking through CNN? That's the first part that makes us rely on conspiracy theories that are completely untenable. The second issue I have with this is EWTN. I'm happy to see that in some fashion that it can fit into here. Mind you, it was actually formed well before 1996. All they got in 1996 was a satellite dish. What's the problem with placing EWTN as the voice of the beast? Does it speak for Benedict or Francis? It speaks for Benedict. They are entirely against Pope Francis. So are they speaking for the papacy? No. Instead, you find we come down to this dispensation, and how many streams do you have internally? You have two. On one side, you have Parminder Me. On the other side, you have the movement in FFA. Come Come down to the papacy, and how many streams do you have? National Catholic Reporter and EWTN. So when Elder Jeff leads this movement, he makes his first presentation on EWTN and says that is proof that I am wrong about the two streams of information. Instead of proving us wrong, he just proved it, because what he identified was there are two streams within the Catholic Church. It entirely fits our model. And in those last, particularly in the last months, 2019, this all blew into an open war between National Catholic Reporter, liberal supporting Francis, and EWTN conservatives supporting Benedict. These were the two media streams for the Catholic Church, and they were openly hostile to each other. Going on to the National Catholic Reporter and look at the 4-part series, it won't be hard to find. Supporting to Google that the 4-part series by NCR, and I'll bring you to these 4 articles against EWTN, and it goes back and forth between them. But we also mentioned LifeSite News. I just want to read this article. It's October 22nd, 2019, by LifeSite News. It says, the Bishop of the Diocese of Exing, Brazil, revealed in a new book that in his diocese, women are not only presiding over liturgies of the word, but are also giving homilies, a practice contrary to the Catholic rules. In his new publication, Bishop Trotter repeats his call for married priests and for female deacons, as well as for female priests. It is in this context that he speaks about a large role that women already play in the church in his own region in Brazil. When claiming that women have too little say in the Catholic Church, he states, Brazil, and perhaps almost somewhere else, is at the most tender flash of light. It is far from proof of the sunrise of these things. That the introduction of women priests and all of this, but is convinced that the time will come, and he hopes that the Amazon Zionoid will break open new paths, make steps towards this direction. In 2014, he met with Pope Francis and explained his views. Then they go to the Australian Bishop, Don Philippi. He says that traditions has had a bad taste. He proposes to get rid of the ballast and has been accumulated over the centuries, which we in our church carry with much suffering, and which some in the right corner fanatically defenders tradition. So yesterday when we closed, we talked about the argument over dispensationalism. It's what divided this movement. It's what God's saying instructs in one dispensation. In application to that, does that change in another dispensation? We've gone through that with diet. We've gone through that with racism. And the final straw for those that left was dealing with that sexism, understanding the methodology of dispensationalism. In this fight between these liberal bishops and the conservative factions is all about how you approach tradition. It is external. Is it external or is it dispensational? The Australian prelate furthermore suggests that there have been many teachings, for example, in the 1800s, that the church in the 20th century abandoned. For example, this is LifeSite News. This is a Catholic publication. He says the church used to believe in some things. And what have they changed? The churches The church's stance with regard to democracy. What did they see to believe about democracy? So the Catholic article is going to make the argument for dispensationalism, saying 300 years ago, the Catholic Church was dead set against democracy and religious liberty. And also two other novelties introduced in the Second Vatican Council that would have been regarded as heretical at the time of the First Council. So they're saying we have already changed some of our beliefs based on dispensation. It's the same thing that we said. We don't eat fish. We don't practice slavery because that was past dispensation, and God is requiring different of us today. They make the argument 2,000 years ago, we did not practice real liberty, religious liberty, and we would not permit democracy.
200 years ago.
What did I say, 1,000?
Yeah, 2000, yeah. 200 years ago. Make the argument 200 years ago.
My eyes are blurring, I guess. EWTN says Pope Francis introduced an abomination into the Catholic Church. He promoted idolatry. National Catholic Reporter responded in their article, why don't those conservatives in EWTN look outside their window and see the Egyptian obelisk in St. Peter's Square? They say because these statues of these pregnant women, they were naked. This horrified conservatives. And NCR says, why don't they look at the proof of the Sistine Chapel, all the paintings of naked people? Remember the Philistines in earlier generation? They wanted the nudes of the Sistine Chapel covered over. So they had this argument back and forth. There are two streams within the Catholic Church, and it's relevant for us to see when all this breaks into the open. April 2019 internally, April 2019 with a counterfeit. So we're getting into the history of September, October 2019. This conflict was the Amazonian Synod, also splitting the church and causing Pope Benedict to write an article to contribute to a book just recently released with a stronger fashion than ever before, undermined his successor. Do we have any questions on what we've done so far? You guys have any questions? Audience asks questions. Elder Tess replies. She says, yes, they believe that Francis is a dictator. Elder Tess answers another question. Depends how radical you go once you get down to church militant type of far right. They believe he's the Antichrist, the prophesied Antichrist of Revelation, that he needs to be replaced by a conservative pope to cleanse the church. Elder Tess answers another question and she replies, if you want to listen to quite laborious, to listen to a book, but still interesting, there's a book. A conservative Catholic wrote a book on the 2014 Synod on the family, and he titled it The Dictator Pope, saying that Pope Francis pretty much as establishing a dictatorship, not just because of what he's done on the Synod of the family, but also how he's been purging the Catholic Church of conservative enemies.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, please.
It's just really interesting. Probably everybody else noticed it before I did, but I mean, maybe I've noticed it before, but you've got internal and external in the Catholic Church, conservative liberalism, and internal and external in the US, in conservative liberalism, and then the same thing here, conservative liberalism. So, and then within, I was going to say something else. I can't remember what the other one was. But all of it is right for exactly what is happening. You know what I mean? All of it is right. I was going to say one other thing. I can't remember what it was, but.
Was it on our line for the priests? For us, for the movement?
No, it just had to do with the distinction between the conservative liberalism and in each of these three, you know, the papacy, the United States, and then the movement.
Okay.
Oh, I know what else I was going to say. It just goes back a little while before, but when you were going through the three streams that he's teaching,
Yeah.
if anybody has already watched, maybe some of you already have I want to say it's maybe number 42 in Portugal, the last one. It's either the last one or the one before that. I think it's the last one. But he really lays out plainly how, because you know how we've learned that the first angel always has the message. It's always, how does she word it, encapsulated, right? So William Miller had the whole message, but it's just more details that come out later. So Jeff had the right message in the Time of the End magazine with the two streams of information in the very beginning. And he says that it's not about the two streams of information because there's three streams. And he says that it's about the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. But in the very beginning, he had the two streams of information. And that was the message to go all the way through the end, was these two streams of information.
Mm-hmm. Elaine, can you continue?
Yeah, or if Brother Fell wants to.
Phil, anyone? I'll be back.
Yeah. Are we on when we come? Yeah. When we come to the internal, we see that prior to November 9, we start saying things that are really quite radical. We're bringing the argument of dispensationalism and equality, and this is what causes Elder Jeff to come out from retirement and speak out publicly against what we're teaching. Same time, 2019, the final months, you have the Amazonian Synod. Everybody knows where Pope Francis is heading, the introduction of bringing equality with women, as far as allowing them in certain cases to perform certain functions, which everyone knows will lead them to being introduced into the priesthood and allowing married priests. And that causes Pope Benedict to come out of retirement, contribute to a book that's been recently released. But he wrote that book, he wrote his portion for that book, not this year, but in the September-October months of 2019. So it might not have been recognized until now. But that was happening at the same time as the internal shaking. So Brother Dennis is just highlighting how he's not permitting for Pope Benedict to speak out against his successor, how he's supposed to wear the white garment that shows his respect and submission to the new Pope. He's not actually permitted, and I think, Brother Dennis, you used the term dead man talking. He's not supposed to interfere with the actions of the successor. That's essentially illegal, not permitted. And can you erase that, please? Can you take that out, please? There we go.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. And yet we have the same in the internal. We have he who symbolically, he ended in 2014. This is marking the death of the first angel. In our history of success, the line of Christ. And yet we come up to this history, and where he is not permitted to be speaking against this movement, we find that he does. So that the compare and contrast work neatly, particularly from 2014 through 2019. You find this transition in 2014 and 2013, but the restructuring Francis does reform in 14. This division between these two sides, the disciples of Jeff, the disciples of Parminder, the disciples of Benedict, the disciples of Francis. The disciples of Benedict saying, please come out of retirement. Please sort out this mess. The disciples of Jeff were not so subtly saying the same thing. We come to April, counterfeited, and this movement, Elder Jeff speaks, pro-Benedict speaks. Later months of 2019, it's open conflict between two streams of information. Open conflict between the movement and FFA, open war between NCR and EWTN, and the conservatives again looking to Benedict. Elder Jeff starts speaking in the final months of 2019. Pope Benedict starts writing in the final months of 2019, both undermining the changes of their successor. That book, only released in the last couple of weeks, Benedict was writing in that time period. The title of the book, From the Depth of Our Hearts. It argues in favor of centuries-old tradition of priestly celibacy within the church. In other words, priestly celibacy is not dispensational. Same argument. This concludes presentation of the two popes. Any discussions?
She's got her mic off. And I got noises.
I'm here.
So good study. It kind of helps more solidify what we did last Sabbath for me, anyways, on the half right, half wrong, and plus helped with what I heard, Parminder laying out with the two streams of information. But they also have the same issues in their conservative liberalism over racism, sexism, and homosexuality. So it's just really interesting to see the layout that clear. With the, Benedict would be for Benedict, the Republicans, and Jeff, and then Francis and the Democrats, and within this movement. But it's all narrowing down to where you're going to have the two, just Francis left and this movement left.
Right.
Go head to head.
No, I agree, because Francis, although he's is it Francis is more of the, well, he's the conservative, huh?
He's the liberal.
No,
He's the liberal, right?
liberal.
So he's the one, helping the poor and doing all that, which is actually a counterfeit, going to be a counterfeit.
Right.
In the end, yeah.
Right. So God is Satan is streamlining his church for this showdown, and God is streamlining his church for this showdown to be so look like the real.
Right.
There was something else you read in there too that I didn't want to interrupt, but another point, and I don't remember what it was, but it's just
Well,
like,
you should
wow.
have interrupt. If when we do these things, we shouldn't be shy to stop and ask questions, because that's going to help all of us.
I know, I'm sorry, but I'm doing DVDs at the same time, so I didn't stop at that time because I was in the middle of something. I'm trying. You guys can hear the noise now, so. But no, it's just interesting to see how it built my faith. I pray it does that for all of us. It built my faith to see how we're all culminating to this one point.
Yeah.
Just one point.
What I see is how the test of when it does come to the Pope, and what's going to happen is that he seems to be a real person, a real honest, caring person, and people we all are going to need to realize that he's not, that he is gonna, that in the end he will be the enemy.
Yeah. And in watching keeping up with the news and stuff that's going on, I was talking to Tony and I were talking about this earlier, but maybe others saw it. But I think it was yesterday or maybe this morning, but Trump is at an all-time high in the polls, and it's like just amazing. But then when you think about it, we know that he's going to go on, so it has to be that he's high in these polls. But it shows the mentality. You've got a president who is wanting to go against the experts and open up the country sooner than the experts say that we should, and it's going to get worse if he does that. And we pretty much have learned he's going to do what he wants to do. You have all these things going on, and yet you have a good portion of the country that supports him. And it just shows the mindset of the people. But when those people are gone and that battle is over, then you have the liberals that are going to be torn between choosing Pope Francis or the Lord. Is that correct?
Yep.
And in having Pope Francis, that's why I was kind of not surprised. Maybe I just didn't know that much was how much was going on with Francis until all of this came out. I never paid that much attention to what they do. But to see that movie of the two of them, and you could see the stage being set for this counterfeit to come up that's fighting all the same issues in his church that we're dealing with here, and that God is working on here, and just amazing. And you got people that, I've heard people point out that if anybody heard the reports on that lieutenant governor in Texas, I think it is, the one that suggested that he's 70 years old and he doesn't mind making the sacrifice, and I'm sure the elderly don't mind making a sacrifice and dying through this in order to, let's open up the country now, or however soon he's talking about, let's open up the country and let the elderly make a sacrifice for the younger. And it's like, here, let the money win is what they want, to save the economy. And what you have left is this mindset of rebels out there and Trump supporters,
It was very hard to listen to him to say, just let the elderly die.
I know.
It's like they're worthless pieces of people. They did live their lives, just let them die. That was like one of the most heartfelt, broken thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, but what they don't understand is 80% of the people who are getting this disease is between 18 and 60.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They don't understand that people, the young, are very susceptible to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they always say, because they're not, you're right, because what's going on is they're thinking in the beginning, it was like, oh, well, the younger people aren't going to get it. But all those people who have underlying problems, and most of the majority, because of their habits, whether it's drinking, eating, whatever, I know many in my family, my nephews and nieces, because of their improper eating, have underlying, things wrong with them.
Right.
So yes, they're susceptible too.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys saw, but 5 so far anyways, maybe it's been updated, but 5 of the, when a couple weeks ago, was it last week or the week before, all those partiers on spring break in Miami, Miami, that 5 of them have been diagnosed, confirmed with the virus. And then there was a party somewhere. Where was that? Kentucky.
I saw that one too. That was the one where they all left their separate ways and got on planes and went home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
It's going to be a total disaster when, if he does, open things up too soon. But I think it's significant that he wants to open it up for Easter. He wants to, if anybody saw that, he just thinks it'll be the greatest thing to fill the churches on Easter. So there's got to be some significance to that. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, he's just I don't know. Satan's ruling is as much as God's trying to get his people, with the right character. It makes no sense. And there's so many out there who knows that it makes no sense. But then of course you have the people who believe him. So our prayer should be, we have so many right now, our prayer should be that even if he does lift that up, we pray for the world not to do that God, we lift them up to God, that they will understand that the God can talk to them and give them the sense to still stay home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because right now, even with family or whatever else, the only thing that we can do right now is keep everything and everyone in prayer. God is checking our characters. God is seeing who are his and who are not. He's purging. And we don't want our family purged, but right now we can't do anything for our family, some of them, because we already know where their mindset is. So we can only pray. So we have a lot of praying, different prayers to make and keep up. That's one of our duties too now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's they're going through a test that many of them don't look like. I mean, from my perspective and my family, I don't see, if you look at the agricultural line and put them on the line and check how they look like they're doing, it doesn't look good, and it's very devastating. We're going to go through by faith, we're going to get through it. We're going to go through some horrible stuff.
And this isn't even the plagues. And I
And
mean, even myself, sometimes I worry of what, you know, what's more to come. But then I remember, you know, in my heart, God's in charge.
yeah, that's what I tell myself all the time. He's in
Yeah.
charge, and he knows what is needed and what's necessary. Because I do know that this is necessary to separate the people.
Yes.
It's absolutely necessary. What's tragic is to watch who winds up being separated out. And you know, and I know I'm seeing, you and I talked earlier today, I'm seeing it in behaviors of within my own family circle. And it's really frightening to see that, and to actually have to come to where you got to let it go, leave them to the Lord, and move on, because we got a work to do.
Yeah.
And just continue to pray for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still think that this is gonna somewhere along the way go away and then come back. And then Dr. Fossey was talking about that too, about it coming in seasonally or in waves. I don't remember how he described that, but but there would be like a fall, and probably another second and a third run on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so then all of us just be, even if it is finally lifted up, you know, I would still be wearing gloves. I would still be cautious wiping things down. I would still be kind of keeping different distances, you know.
Yeah.
In a sense, you know, not because we don't trust in the Lord, only because we know that it's repeating.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting to see that 49% of the people are supporting him. An all-time high is what they're saying, that to think that where that's going to go when it comes to the election. And
do you know what which reporter, which or wherever that came from, the source?
Which one?
I was saying giving the statistics of how
49%.
Yeah.
It was a Gallup poll, and I'm pretty sure maybe some of you guys that know more about this, but isn't Gallup poll one of the more reliable ones that they use?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
So that's not even just a Fox News special run thing. It was
right.
Gallup poll.
Okay.
And it's amazing that they, you know, if it's his base, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but people want their money. That's what it really is showing us, is that there's this division over people want their money. The conservatives, the evangelicals, Wall Street, Trump, they don't want their money gone. And they're watching their money disappear. And they're willing to put human life over their money. And
they're saying that this money that's coming out is only really going to last only going to last like for 3 months. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have let me pull it up. Hang on one second. We all know this, but I just want to read it because it comes to my mind a lot through all this place. And let me pull it up and then I'll share it. So James chapter 5, where we're at, in go to, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, your garments are moth-eaten, your gold and silver is cankered, the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. And that Sabaoth, I think I've heard, is the word judgment, is the Lord of judgment. Is that correct? Maybe somebody has it more clearly, but I think it's judgment. You've lived in pleasure on the earth and been wanton. You've nourished your hearts as in the day of slaughter. You've condemned and killed the just, and he doth resist you. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and that's what we need to see it as, it's precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and the latter rain. Ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh.
Amen.
So we're seeing them being tested on money. I don't know if test is the right way to say it, but it's between human life or money right now.
Yeah,
Well, as
can,
we know, God is trying to find the people who care, the people with the honest heart, the people who give, better to give and not to receive, to help those, even if we have something, even as, we still share it, God is
Right.
like testing everyone now,
Right.
because only your
just wanted,
character will go to heaven.
yeah, just wanted to say is like can't serve two masters,
Nope.
Right.
Mammon
Amen.
and God.
And totally the mindsets are being seared. Sealed? Is that how you say it? Seared or sealed?
Yeah.
Has anybody watched those last presentations that he does on Matthew
Yeah.
13 and showing where the sealing takes place?
Yes.
You saw that? So Lena, since you've seen it, he didn't do this in the presentation, but does that take our sealing back in the fractal level? Or was he saying our sealing is at the Sunday law?
There was a lot of interaction back and forth, and then from what I understood is the sealing, I guess the sealing is happening right after the Sunday law. The Sunday law is like beginning of the sealing. So um and then he explains the sealing is the settling into the truth.
Right.
Yeah, intellectually, yeah. And that all happens before the close of probation. So Sunday law and close of probation is between these two waymarks, is the sealing happening. And then he says that by compare and contrast, then he draws the conversation into direction of what was the problem with FFA, as they did not accept that when there is when he talks about the sealing of the mark of the beast, yeah, then if you don't get the mark of the beast, there is no, like, if you don't get seal of God, there is no other option that you get nothing.
Right.
Get mark of the beast. So there's only two options, and there's only two streams of information. So it all comes from, like, there is no vacuum, there's no emptiness.
Right.
No.
So where the mark of the beast happens is the same place that the seal, and so where does it begin is what he was showing, where it begins.
Yeah.
And if the mark of the beast, he proved it, laid it on the line and proved it, that the mark of the beast begins at the Sunday law,
Yeah.
and therefore the seal also has to begin, the sealing begins at the Sunday law.
It's interesting, it makes so much sense, because since 2014 all these things were escalating, this gathering of the powers that are, promote nationalism, and this Christian nationalism, and this is so powerful, is because that, before, when I used to follow Alex Jones and all that, all this were like sporadic. They didn't have like some kind of one unified idea. It was all about suspicion against the establishment, any establishment. Suspicion to the point that you don't believe anything. You're being brainwashed to not believe anything you see or hear. But from 2014, the different picture comes. The scene, the focus is on a different, the whole world. The Alex Jones goes away. He's not anymore in the spotlight. It's not anymore the sporadic, this here and there people. Even Walter White, he goes away. I mean, I used to follow him, from 2014, uh, you know, spotlights, attention on him goes down. And when I tried to watch his presentations, they were insubstantial. They were just the same repetitions. So what I'm trying to say is that what the takes place, how our lines show, the 2014 becoming really the focus is taking place, is the gathering of these powers that are going to lead to the final final battle. And in Sunday law is, that's the time when, right away, all this, all around me, the people that I used to know, in the church, it's really truly settling into the whatever truths they are following, into whatever ideology they have been sipped in. Because when come 2016, it was just a natural choice for them. But now, after if there was some among my friends that were doubtful, that were on the verge in 2016 and voted for Trump. Now when I ask them, do you, after all this, Mueller report, this and that, there's so much evidence, do and they are even further, are confirmed that they have made the right choice, because you compare it to Biden or to some this some other, socialism and all this kind of things, and it's very logical for them to just keep go on choosing Trump. So it is what I'm trying to say is that, for if you're a Trump supporter, it isn't you are it's I'm not saying that they don't have a chance, but it is very hard for them, because they are not the focus group, they are not the group that can hear and listen. And for them to come out of that is, requires a lot of prayer and a lot of, I don't know, it's a miracle, and Holy Spirit. And sorry, I'm rambling.
Yeah, because they definitely hear completely different than we do. I kind of had that situation today with somebody. They hear
Thank you,
completely
Sister
different
Nana.
than we do.
Yeah.
And
We
really,
probably all have some family who are, just, well, I know I do. I know, Elaine, you have too. Just, there's nothing better than Trump.
and some, even those that don't like Trump, they may be so far on the liberal side that
Hmm.
they can't see it either.
Yeah.
Like, I know that I'm pretty sure I try to size up what I don't read my son's mind, and he doesn't talk much about it, but the discussions that we do have, I think the Bernie people think that this is going to someday be utopia. How can it be utopia until you get rid of all the arrogance and all the pride? You just can't. It's not going to, it'll never be that utopian society as long as you have this pride and arrogance going on. And it's just really sad. So,
Yeah.
well, maybe we all pray for one another's families and pray for each other, and continue to
world.
keep on. And
Yeah, I think it's also that lately it's the focus on our, when we was with the close of probation, one of the things that we started thinking about is that we need to be prepared, physically,
yes,
and that to we basically, go back to the, health reform message, that how, so there was discussion in the Bible study group about fasting, water fasting, and all these things. And I think this was like so beneficial. It's like God was like leading us on this way, because because these things that is happening now, and I'm not, I don't follow it too closely. I mean, I do, but there's just too much of the things that I have on my plate right now. But I have to say that it is preparing us to the things that will happen just right before it. Like, if you notice, you know uh that we started our, we just were talking about it, that the Zoom meetings and everything, and it happened before we learned to use all these things, um before the need came. And the same way that our health message, we were primed to work on it before things started developing. And these things aren't even, this isn't, I don't even believe this is truly, God's punishment. This is simply a, cause and effect. So, but what I'm trying to say is that there is an interesting thought that I've been thinking about it too, and Sister Adriana was talking about, asked a question on Bible study group is about, so the 144,000, could it be that, just like in the times of on the line of ancient Israel, when out of 12 disciples and out of all the disciples of Christ, it was only John that is symbolizes 144,000. So like, is there like a limited number of people that are going to be that are going to meet him alive and be the 144,000? You know what I mean? Out of the priests. And I remember there was a presentation by actually Elder Parminder was talking about this, that we are not, we should consider that it's we don't believe in predestination. So it is us out of the priests, out of the number of the priests. However, we have to remember that there is accidents, disease, death, and persecution. So this kind of things, we can't rule it out. But yet it is not, I don't believe that those who will be 144,000, I don't believe that they will be literally just the priests that survived. What I'm trying to say is that they must have some kind of special function to do to survive and be the 144,000.
Yeah.
It's hard, when I think about it, because then it becomes really, then does it mean that we have to work on our our health and our physical and our spiritual, not to say spiritual, but learn as much as we can. So I mean, that is true, with the intellectual part, but it looks like we also have to prepare ourselves on a physical level, like these really I guess, how would I put it, basically work on our health issues.
Yeah, I've been saying that. I said that when we went to Cottonwood, briefly, just talked about it in the very beginning of that, when we started there, that I really believe, because years ago, I used to exercise a lot more than I do. I've come down to the last few years where I walk, and I've just been really noticing the need. And I always liked when I worked out more. I felt better. I felt stronger and healthier, and the mind was clearer. All of it played a role. So I started kind of adding that back in quite a while back, and then mentioned it in Cottonwood, because you get the blood moving more, and we need to be physically fit, really physically fit for this great work. And physically fit is going to help us mentally as well. So they all work together. I just ordered my son, I'm not one for a big one for equipment. I usually do my own thing, but my son got certified to be a personal trainer, and he was here for a couple of days and had this device, right? And he showed me how to use it. And I just, in trying it just a little bit, I could tell right away, because I really like when I feel like it's working muscles that I don't ever touch. And what I'm doing isn't touching muscles that I need, and especially like back in the back and in your stomach and your core and stuff like that, where you can really get a lot of strength. And so I went ahead and ordered it for me, and I'll show it to you. I'll email it out if anybody wants to see it. But it was not that hard of an exercise so far, anyways. But I used it just a little bit with him, and then he stayed a couple of days, so I used it the next morning in my normal routine. And I woke up today wanting to do it because my body wanted it that bad. It felt so good that I wanted to do it.
That's great.
So, but I do believe that it's really important for us to look at all those aspects to get fit. We're going to battle, but it's a spiritual battle, and it's going to be a lot of mental anguish to go through. And if we're weakened in all these other areas, it's going to be harder for us to go through and stay strong. I know that, I went through some stuff, talked to Tony about it today, that if we're run down, it's going to be a lot harder. And it's really important for us to be fit physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. That's something I've prayed about for the last few years when we started to realize, where this was headed. And I've asked the Lord to help me to be equip us to be physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally ready. Because we're going to go, we're seeing all these deaths and everything else. We're going to see a lot. And people are going to be depressed and all these other things. And we need to hold tight to that which we know and always be ready to give a reason for the hope that is in us, right? And so to be able to give a reason, they have to see it in us. And so if we get despondent, then what are they going to see?
Yeah, I know.
So they need to see the hope that is in us so that we can give a reason to it. And that we don't have any fear. And that when it comes to the virus, I don't fear that. It's just really sad to watch the division that's happening in people. And so I don't know, nobody knows for sure.
It's not to I think that there's also a side effect that is, I would say it's a kind of a positive side effect. While it's forcing people into homes and to isolate themselves, what do you do in isolation? A lot of people watch TV or look at the computers. So what are they doing? They're plugging themselves into this stream of information.
Yeah.
And it's like almost like you're on a lockdown. People were put on a lockdown to go and learn. Those who want, basically make their own choices. And because the other day we were driving around at night, this is a countryside, and but we were driving through a neighborhood, and almost in every house there was a room and people sitting either at the TV or at the computer. And it's like amazing. Everybody's plugged in. So that is,
they were plugged
it's
into
just
the right thing.
So that people can learn more about the things that because a lot of people were just busy working. The worry of this life is hustle and bustle taking over. But now with this situation, as tragic as it is, but the side effect, also one of those unexpected side effects, is that people will get to see and get to figure out who is right and who is wrong at a time as this.
Yeah, depending on how they are drawn to use their time. I know I was thinking about it the other day that I'm only working as long as these Mary Kay ladies are working, and I thought, well, that'd be a good thing. I won't be able to pay for anything. That's fine. I don't care. We're going to come to that anyways. But look at the time we'd have to study.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's not
So
like
if that's what
blessing
I'm
too.
going to trust God. If that's where it takes us, then I'll trust the Lord all the way through. And if that's where He sees fit, because we know it's going to come to that point anyways. It's just a matter of when and whether or not this is one of those times. I don't know. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on this, but I kind of see it as a test run, so to speak, to do a sifting of people. Not a test run, but I'm trying to think of how to say it. It's like people are witnessing, depending on what side of the fence you're on, though, they're witnessing people want to choose money over human life. And it's waking some people up that this is really wrong. This is really bad. But I see it, and I don't know, I need to keep up always on the presentations because to see how it is on a line, but it would seem like God is going to be merciful and stop this at some point. And then you watch the fallout. So it stops and everything goes back to normal. Then you watch the fallout. What do people do after such a crisis? What do they do after the hurricanes? What do they do after the fires? What do they do after all those disasters? They go right back to what they're doing. So there's going to be a group of people that are just going to go right back to what they're doing. And then there's going to be a group of people that are going to be like, something's really going on and we need to find out what it is. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think, and then the next time, it gets worse.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So right now with this COVID-19, things are shut down, the restriction of travel and social, I don't know. For me, I don't like that term social distancing. I don't like it, but it's, I guess, we're adhering to it. So my question specifically deals with social distancing is that at what point, because we know, and at least I believe, that when this phase will end, another wave will come and another, the plagues will come and it's just going to keep coming until the final time. So when these more, more plagues come and they say, the same thing here, lockdown, social distancing, at what point are we as God's, God's remnant, at what point are we going to say, forget this, we got work to do, and we got to see these people, we got to talk to these people, we got, we need to warn these people, or is it just going to be all on the internet and we're not going to see anybody? I mean, at what point do we just stop this social distancing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, definitely the Lord is I look at it as the Lord has left the internet intact and electricity intact for this, because if we were dealing with one big natural disaster worldwide, we'd be without our electricity, we'd be without our internet, and then we have this event here and we still have all that access. So we're producing out, the movement is producing all kinds of videos. There's going to be all kinds of information for people when they're ready to go search. And so whether or not we go places and talk, all we do know is we'll know as we get closer is when we get the Panium, that's when we go to work. So whatever
We pray for wisdom.
Yeah, pray for wisdom.
We got to pray for wisdom to know when it is time to go out.
Yeah.
Because, like they want to say in April it's going to be okay, but it's not. How can it be?
But we don't go do the work anyways until Panium. So
no, but what I'm saying is we do want to go out and share, and plant seeds. But as of now, until we're safer, but we need wisdom in all we do now. Everything's we're gonna have to have this wisdom.
May I just say that I think nowadays majority of the world population have access to the media, and also Panium is the next year. And by next year, there is a hope that the vaccine is going to be. There was an article that the vaccine can actually. There is by the structural biologist modeling, the prediction is that its coronavirus can elicit. The vaccine can elicit pretty good immunity, and this may help, and I believe that once it becomes available, the population will start getting vaccinated, will start to get vaccinated, and besides that happens next year. I mean, if you look at the timeline, they're saying that a year and a half. Okay, so a year would be April next year and a half would be somewhere fall, and somewhere around that time that test says about going to to the church, and then going to the world. Yeah, so I was just saying that it kind of fits, but I may be wrong. Also, that it is quite possible that for example, there was some time ago I talked to one of my church friends, and I did not disclose the details, but I said something big is going to happen, and it's going to be it was the closer to the November of the 2019. And I did not say the date, but I said that it's the end of the year and something big is going to happen that's going to change everything. And at that time I tried to be very careful as not to disclose anything, so but I was telling her, that she needs to prepare herself, and now and then I we and
Hello?
later on
Oh.
um uh and later on, just recently, yesterday, she texted me and she says, I remember you told me that there is something big is going to happen at the end of the year. What is it that, can you explain? Did you have some kind of spiritual experience? Because it is as if you had, prophetic eye. And I did not respond to her yet, and I'm just asking God to give me wisdom to say the right thing if I ever need to say anything. I know it's not time yet, but I hear it. But it reminds me of that time. If you remember that, I think Sister Adriana, she mentioned about that there is going to be an event in our walk, in the walk of the priests, that we will be, just like on the line of Christ, where he was asked, the miracle at Cana, the Galilean Cana, um, uh, you know what I mean? The miracle of the before, the mother asked him, make a miracle because do help this wedding for with the wine, and he says, no, it's not my time yet. But then he makes that miracle. Hello?
I'm listening.
Yeah.
Anybody else
So
is there? Yeah, sorry.
so that's how it felt. It's felt like something that I did not even know that people will listen, or and this big thing is happening now. And she says that I feel like you had some prophetic, eye, some kind of
Insight,
prophetic.
yeah.
And I wanted, I wanted to, in very, mild, gentle terms, to just, let her easy into, into the message, but not really the message, more like start explaining about the parallels, about, but then again, what I'm trying to say is that this is going to happen in each of your um walk, and this is probably not even the event that portrays that miracle at the wedding. So that there has got to be God will find a way for this to happen.
He is.
So
He's creating it all as we
yes,
go along. He really is. He's creating the situation that opens the door for people to want to know, to
yes,
want to hear the gospel.
and what we really, I, after she talked, she texted me and she sent me, she was so, and then when I said it's not time for me to talk to you yet, and she kept texting me, she was asking me to, well, maybe you can, just give me a hint or something like that, so people are coming.
Yes.
And there's going to be an event like that is, I suddenly realized that this is so important, what we're doing here right now.
Yeah.
This is so important. It's so important to watch and to write down and to understand what is it that you're going to say, how are you going to explain to these people, because that is how are you going to explain in such a way that it would convince and reach their hearts, because it's going to have to be not only a logical explanation, but it's going to be on their level, so that they can understand where you're coming from. Because, like, you know what I mean, like, because if we start talking about scattering time and gathering time, a lot of people have no idea what is scattering and gathering.
The Lord will lead us on that part. Our job is to learn it,
Yes, exactly.
and He will lead us on that part. Because I've had, we probably all have had sometimes where you wind up and not even realize how did that even come out of my mouth,
Yeah,
and and you walk away knowing they just heard something really powerful, but that you watch them and they don't really know what they heard, and all you can do is just trust the Lord that they heard what they needed to hear. Now He's going to work on them.
yes, amen. You know,
Beautiful.
Sister Elaine, I just wanted to say that sometimes when you send these quotes in the morning, SMS message or in the group, sometimes they just not even sometimes, very often they strike at the right time, at the right moment, like it is so, some of the moments were so important, so key in my experience, in my walk, that it's like you're a walking prophet.
No, no, no. We're all walking in the same steps right now. You know what I mean?
Yes,
We're all, it hits you because we're all in the same place, learning the same things. You know what I mean? You guys pick up something, come across something that it all fits together with all of us. Does that make sense?
yeah,
So we're all, but we're all we're all like reading in different places and studying different things at this, at various times, but we see the connections, you know what I mean? We see the connections as we're studying, and so it's part of what's going on with all of us.
yeah. I just wanted to also just say, to encourage each one of us, each one of that is here right now, each one of us, that you guys we don't realize how important our work is, how important we are, because there's so little of us. So what we need to do is, we should, this event, when she started asking me questions and she would not let me go, made me feel like, and I, all this time, I've been feeling like, oh, I don't think my work is that important. I'm just probably gonna, succumb to this to this virus. But I'm just saying that this job is very important. It's probably the job, the only job that that matters all the way through
Oh
eternity.
yes, oh yes. Everything has to go into our readiness for this, that whatever it takes, and laying aside anything that stands in the way from our time to study and our time to learn and our time, you know what I mean? Anything
Yes.
stands in the way. He's been doing that with all of us, bit by bit. We don't do this anymore, we don't do that anymore, we don't do this anymore. But a lot of it's because, for me, it was because I needed more time to study, I needed more time to read, I had to be practical, I had to streamline how I prepare food, I had to streamline how I get food, I had to streamline all these different things just so that I could have more time. And that's him working in us to do that this has become our priority. And I praise him for it, because I mean, I ask myself, what, first of all, we're called, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why did we answer? I asked myself that. Why did I even answer when we see so many people want nothing to do with God? Why did we answer? And then, second, why do we keep going? What makes us keep going? I think about that a lot, and I thank God for it, because he's teaching us, he's bringing us to that total trust in him, total humility, and that we can do nothing without him, to totally trust in him. He's proving himself to us. He's proving himself to us.
Amen.
But I got to wrap up, if you guys are okay with that. I was thinking maybe ask Brother Fell if he'd like to pray.
I'll be glad to. Let's kneel to pray. Our wonderful loving Father in heaven, you're an awesome God, and we come, Lord, to give you praise, acknowledging that you alone are God who is holy and righteous and so merciful. How grateful we are, Lord, that you are mindful of each and every one of us, how you lead us, how you guide us, how you teach us, how you interact with each and every one of us, wake us up. Lord, we are so grateful that you are indeed a personal God who directs our lives. Because as we look around the world, Lord, it's a mess. And but we are in order. We are in control, because we believe in the mighty God who is God of order and who is in control. So thank you, Lord, that in the midst of the turmoil and midst of chaos, midst of fear all around us, Lord, midst of questions People do not know what's going on and why this is happening and why that's happening, and they want answers. And Lord, there's not many out there who has answers, but you have given us answers. And so, Lord, we are grateful that you do give us answers, that when we are asked, that we will be ready to answer, that we will be ready to give them the hope that are in us, so they too will feel the need to know that God that we know. So thank you, Lord. And Lord, thank you for these studies. Thank you for our elders. Thank you for this group. Thank you for the internet, the Zoom. And personally, Lord, thank you that I'm at least now somewhat interested in the internet, getting a little bit in with the Zoom and things of the computer, getting more used to it. So I thank you, Lord, because right now this is the only way we can meet. So thank you for keeping the power, the internet, the energies. So thank you. And we have nothing, Lord, but to say thank you. And as we now part company, and Lord, as we're ready to sleep tonight, Lord, we ask for peace that the world cannot give, the peace that only you can give, that we will have a restful night and prepare ourselves for the Friday night meeting. Thank you, Lord. We pray all this in the name of Yeshua, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen. I was wanting to point out too, is if anybody else has seen this the way I see it, when it comes to the coronavirus and everything, how it's transpired, it's like every day was something more devastating, right? And it dawned on me, maybe it was Tony that I talked to. I don't think I said this on Sabbath. I think it was Tony that I talked to Sunday morning. Maybe she can correct me. But, or she jumped off, I think. Is it, because I've seen this as the, like in a big movie, so to speak, of Moses going to Pharaoh and saying, let my people go, and seeing how that was pleading with the people of Egypt, right? The Egyptians, and how it's playing a role on the Egyptians, so that some Egyptians are going to start seeing and realizing what's going on, and it's wrong, and they're going to want to leave with Israel when they leave. But when the stock market kept dropping, and then it was like, hit me when I read an article. Yeah, I think it was Sunday, when I read one of the articles that said that Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, however you say that, was shut down, and several other of his hotel properties were shut down. And it's like, just totally like the plagues going on Pharaoh, one after the other. It's one plague, but it gets more extreme and more extreme and more extreme and more extreme. And it's like God is saying, how long are you going to hold on to your money? How long is that what's going to be important to you? And I'm going to take it more away, and then more away, and then more away. And what was his reaction? Because in my mind, I thought, well, when did Pharaoh ever humble his heart? Never, right? So,
right.
So he's having it taken away more and more and more. So what's his answer? We got to get back open this country. We can't be a closed country. We're too big of a country. We can't do that. We can't be a closed country. We got to open up. And that the staying closed was doing more damage to the economy than the virus itself was doing. So it's doing more damage. The virus isn't doing the damage. It's staying closed up is doing the damage. So we need to reopen. And I was like, wow, when he does that, that's where it goes. This thing's going to explode. And that's a matter of God's in control, if that's the way God wants to do it, or if he's going to let it go away and then bring it back. However the Lord does it. It's like it's going to give people a reprieve and a place, an opportunity to breathe and get their wits about them and think about what is happening. And some of them are, obviously, there's those that are poised to go back and celebrate their money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember I'm not sure, maybe 2 months ago, or maybe January, I think, that you mentioned a book that was written like 100 years ago, that
The Trump one?
the Trump one, yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so I know, so there is another book. I haven't read it, but I saw it in the internet. He's a big mystery novel writer. I heard his name, but I've never read it.
Oh, the Dean Kunst one?
Dean Koontz one, yeah. But
Yeah, I saw that too.
you see that one? And
Yeah.
in the 80s, he wrote a book and named the virus Wuhan, and then
Mhm.
the year, this year, last year, yeah. So that was weird.
Yeah. Did everybody already hear that, or do you want to hear what it said?
I guess I would like to hear, because I have heard, but I haven't heard the details. I heard it in passing.
It was 1981. It was Dean Koontz. He was an author there, and he says in around 2020, a severe pneumonia-like illness will spread throughout the globe, attacking the lungs and bronchial tubes and resisting all known treatments. Almost more baffling than the illness itself will be the fact that it will suddenly vanish as quickly as it arrived, attack again 10 years later, and then disappear completely. Made me think about, why is 10 years later? Because it'll be over. But there was another page to it, and I don't know if I have that other page. I think I saw it on WhatsApp. The other page is the one that talks about Wuhan, and I don't remember who. Somebody posted it in Sacramento Fellowship, but it's like way back there. So I'd have to go way back to try to find it. But it was in the other page where he talks about it being in Wuhan, China. And just keep in mind, if that sounds like really, wow, fascinating, all that kind of stuff, keep in mind that Satan knows what's going on to some extent too.
Yeah, it's interesting that the things that this, with this virus, if you think about it, what it causes, it actually helps the cause of Satan, meaning that his message is nationalism. Yeah, his message is the closed borders, no foreigners. Yeah, and this perfectly fits in it. You're now forced to do that, and I mean, it's healthy to do that at this point. Not to say healthy, but it is, social distancing is a way to prevent it, or slow down the spread. But if you think about it, for those people who want to make it an issue of racism, they will make it an issue of racism. And Trump exactly did that. He crossed out the coronavirus, and he says Chinese virus.
Yes, he did. And I found the other page of it. It's in this book. I don't know if it's the next page. I can't see the page numbers. It says they call the stuff Wuhan 400 because it was developed at their rDNA labs outside the city of Wuhan, and it was the 400th viable strain of man-made microorganisms created at that research center. So keep in mind, this is like conspiracy theories, theorists, those that are out there studying conspiracy theories, this is their evidence, right? So Wuhan 400 is a perfect weapon. It afflicts only human beings. No other living creature can carry it. And like syphilis, Wuhan 400 can't survive outside a living human body for longer than a minute. And it just goes on. So he labels it Wuhan 400. As it comes out of China, and he says it comes out of a lab. That's perfect for those that believe that this whole thing is manufactured by the Democrats as a hoax. And so that just feeds to the conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, that's a friend of mine sent me a video on Walter White, and I was like, oh, okay, about Walter talking about the coronavirus, and he uses that to imply that all of this is a conspiracy.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
It's amazing.
Yeah, a church member that I haven't talked to in a long time, he messaged me on Facebook that probably the same video as Walter White.
Yeah.
I just said thank you. I pray you're doing well.
It's funny, these people, they never change. They're the same. You can come back to watch their videos like 2 years later and they're saying the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And this is supposed to be I always wondered about that too. way back when my son was still coming to church, when they were younger, we used to go to the Bible studies at this one guy's house he's now an amazing fact evangelist. And but he used to do Friday night Bible studies. And I remember Chris one time, my son, saying that we were in the discussion and he was talking about Satan being what do you call it? Insane because, and I've heard that this is not actually accurate. I think I looked it up once a long time ago, but the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
and expect a different result. And so that's what I see Adventism is they just keep doing the same old thing and they're just waiting for something to just change. It's going to happen, but they're not even going to see what it is because they just kept studying the same thing or kept saying the same stuff. So yeah, I feel bad because this guy that sent it to me, I mean, back in the day when I used to share all the videos, I mean, he's one I shared a lot of videos with, you know?
Yeah, it's like what Elder Tess said in the video number 39. She says that, you know, the test is in the information,
right?
Not so much
in the death.
In the deaths. And she's so right, because it's the information that's causing everybody to be so totally confused.
Yes.
Died to listen to Trump.
And then remember the guy that he took that malaria pill, the couple, and then he died, and his wife is in intensive, you know, it's in the hospital. I mean, the information is what they took his advice. Because he said that, you know, this drug is going to be amazing and it could actually cure. So they went and, you know, used what they had, you know, and her husband died.
Yeah.
So that information actually killed the husband.
He denies that, takes no responsibility for it. I saw people say that that's their own fault. They made that choice.
So you really do have to know the information is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because it leads you to literally to death.
Well, Friday, this is our Sabbath for the Zoom camp meeting. So Friday it's Tony and I, Friday and Sabbath, and we start at the same time. I think 6. We might start pushing Friday back to 6:30. I'm going to try to keep doing it at 6 because I like also being able to be done a little bit early because I get all the stuff ready for Sabbath. Well, we're not going anywhere, so it's not that big of a deal. But it's easier for me to have a little bit later when the daylight hours are the way they are. So, but for now, we're going to keep starting at 6. And so we start at 6 on Friday. And I don't know, I'll talk to Tony if she wants to go first. And then we'll try to just meet back here again and praise God that we're still here and praise God for all the blessings he bestows upon us.
Amen.
So we'll see you guys Friday at 6.
Okay. Good
night.
All right. God bless.